Good morning. Good morning, everybody. You can feel free to have a seat once you find your way back there, or just, the other seat, if you just made a new friend, you can sit down next to them now. Whatever works best for you is great. I'm so excited to get the chance to hang out with y'all this morning and to have the chance to explore the scriptures together and to find out how we as a community here at Oak Lawn can serve the community in Oak Lawn and all the folks that we know around us. So let's take a moment and pray. God, you're here. It's not always in a sanctuary that we find you. Sometimes it's in the parlor of a church building. And sometimes it's in the elevator of a church building. And sometimes it's in a coffee shop next door. And sometimes it's down at Taqueria La Fontana. Sometimes it's at JR's. Some of us have found you there more than others, God. Some of us, sometimes it's in the workplace or in our homes, but God, you are there. And so wherever you are, wherever we are, may we find you always. Amen. It is always fun to preach here.
I didn't say that, by the way.
No, that's probably right. 6 years ago, a young man by the name of Michael Brandon Hall stepped foot into the Ronald E. McNair Discovery Academy. It was an elementary school in DeKalb County, Georgia. And out of his bag, he pulled an AK-47. An automatic rifle, which he fired into the ground. And threatened to kill all the students there. We haven't heard as much about this story because it ended differently than a lot of others. A woman by the name of Antoinette Tuff, who would soon live into the fullness of her name, was a bookkeeper. She saw this man. She put down her books. She walked over to him. And she started a conversation with a man with an AK-47 in the lobby of a school. We're going to talk today about loneliness. We're going to talk a bit today about Jesus' instructions and protocol for a party. Because it's Labor Day weekend. It's a good time to talk about parties. I'm not sure if that was part of the plan in the lectionary text when the people who decided, when we would read different texts, decided, yes, Labor Day weekend, that's the time to give Jesus party instructions. Because, but that's what we're going to do. And the reality is that instructions for a party matter. They matter. Because the reality is that as we get older, making friends is a lot harder, and we don't have classes on how to make a friend when we're older, right? We learn about it in pre-K, we learn about it in kindergarten, how you make friends with people, how to be a good friend. But the reality is being a good friend when you're in your 20s is very different from when you're 7. And there's no refresher course. It's not like you get to college and then it's all right, folks, friendship. 316, sign up now, right? You don't get that class when you enter into your 20s or when your kids leave your house and now you have all this free time. Only one kid has left my house. I do not have lots of extra free time. But your kids leave your house and you have all this extra free time and now I can develop friendships and I don't know how anymore. Finding friends and developing friendships is a thing that's more difficult as we get older because the old tricks of oh wait, hold on, you like Pokemon? I like Pokemon. Right, it does. Okay, that's fair. Those days aren't completely over. There's Pokemon Go, it's real. All right, cool. I'll come up with a different analogy if I ever recycle this sermon. Right, but there's limitations to the ease of connections, but also we face a reality where folks move a lot more than they used to. It used to be that in American society, the vast majority of people lived in the same town they grew up in, or within 5 miles. The folks who you went to high school with were still around you. And a lot of times those friendships continued. For better or for worse, we live in a world where that's no longer the case, where folks are highly transitory. I'm just going to do a little poll in the room. I don't know what the results are. How many folks in this room grew up and lived in Dallas? Wow. 3, 4, 5 hands? Right? That's less than 10% of the people in this room. And there are disadvantages of that. It's also great, like, I'm glad I don't live in the same place that the people I went to middle school with I lived in, right? Because there's some things I would like to get past. Right? So there are advantages of this as well. But there are difficulties that come with loneliness. And we also, just as we get older, encounter more self-doubt. Because of friendships that went wrong, because of relationships that were bad. We typically undervalue the way that we think other people perceive us. Gillian Sandstrom is a professor at University of Essex, which is in England, which means she must be inherently smarter than all of us, right? Because she got an accent. And one of the things that she studied was this, that she would have, after people would meet each other for the first time, have a certain number of social interactions, they would poll them so that if, Greg were interacting with Rob over here on random occasions, then they would poll him and ask Rob, okay, what did you think of Greg? And they would ask Greg, what do you think Rob thinks of you? What they found is that someone like Greg, just as a human being, would inherently assume that Rob thought less good of Greg than he actually did. And it was true with something like 90% of people. Think about that. 90% of people assume others think less of them than they actually do. We tend to assume that others don't like us, and so this loneliness thing really kicks in. And it's significant in our world. 22% of the general population, roughly 14 people in this room, feel lonely to a point that they say it's detrimental to their health and well-being. 14 folks in this room. Maybe more, given who's in this room. It's especially high among seniors. The number jumps to 43%, by the way. And 54% of Americans polled recently claim that not a single person knows them well. 31 people in this room feel like not a single person knows them well. This matters. It matters more than just our own sense of happiness. This matters in terms of there's a strong link between loneliness and mental disorders, with depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, suicidal ideation, all linked to loneliness. Add to that, and it's seen in a causal fact and not just that they're tend to walk along with each other. UCLA recently did a study, just 2 years ago released, revealed that social isolation triggers changes in the human body on a cellular level. That results in an increased risk of heart disease, stroke, cancer, and Alzheimer's. When Jesus came and gave instructions on a party and how to interact with other people, it wasn't because it was just fluff. Right? And it seems strange, like this is the God who knit you together in your mother's womb, the God who knit the universe together, who out of the leftover pieces of stardust. This is the God who was the G in OMG, right? This is the God who died to set all of us free. This is the God of empty tombs and miraculous wombs, the Alpha and the Omega, the Prince of Peace, the everlasting God, the King of Kings, and everything else that Handel made reference to in his Messiah. Gives instructions for a party. The first miracle in the Gospels takes place in John when the wine runs out. And Jesus' mother says, you need to make more. So the first tip maybe for our Labor Day party instructions is like, when the wine runs out, be like Jesus, run to the store and come back. Be that person. That's the first thing that we might take away from it. But secondly, beyond that, we have instructions specifically in the gospel today on how to live into that. He gives these directions that when you're at a party, go to the place of lowest honor. Now, he kind of dangles the carrot in front of them in a society that was very much built on social status. We don't know anything about that. That was very much built on social status. Like, then someone might elevate you and bring you up, but you don't want to be embarrassed by being in the places that you're not supposed to be and no one talks to you or pretends like you don't belong there. Right? He gives a very practical reason, but I think behind it is something deeper, is something more significant. That when we step into that place, it's a strategy for building relationships. If you are someone who is suffering from some measure of friendship poverty, go into a room, and oftentimes what we do is when we're experiencing something like that, we judge ourselves as being less than. Because I walk into a room and I don't have a lot of friends, and then what we do is we see someone else who's kind of standing by themselves, and we think like, oh, they're less than too. Because I know how I feel being alone. They must be bad. And so we try to kind of elevate ourselves. The better strategy, I think, comes from Jesus. Scan the room. Who's the loneliest looking person? Talk to them. They're the ones who are most looking for a relationship and someone to chat with anyway. By the way, don't do this on a plane. It's just annoying. But in like every other social situation, right? Loneliest person in the room, go to them. Talk to them. My dad just got home from a flight last night. This has nothing to do with anything. And he said, I got on this flight, sat down next to this person. We talked like the whole time. And I was like, that was a 4-hour flight. You are my nightmare, but it's fine. Right? Like, go to that loneliest person in the room. Be with them. But not just when you are lonely. When you have the privilege of relationships, when you have the privilege of status, this is one of those times that I want Jesus' annoying voice to be in your head. Do I go talk to those people that I know and love who will accept me immediately? Or do I scan the room and see, who do I need to talk to? I had this opportunity of annoying voice of God when I attended a thing for folks who had participated, alumni and current class of the Mayor's Star Council. It's a leadership development cohort that's put on by an organization here in Dallas, develops a next generation of leadership for the city. And I walked into the room and I saw Councilman Adam Magoo, who I know very well and count as a friend. And then I saw Christy Myers, who works for the Neighbor Up program. And I saw Jolie Angel Robinson, who's the head of community affairs for Dallas Police Department. And they're standing talking to each other, and they're all really good friends. And I wanted to go talk to the three of them because also I need Adam Magoo to do something for me, right? Because we have that thought of how, we sometimes think of city council folks transactionally, but I also have the joy of thinking him as a friend. I wanted to go to there, but then Jesus' annoying voice, because I've been reading the scripture, came into my brain. And instead I scanned the room, and I walked over to someone who didn't have anyone with them. I don't always do that. I'm not always the best. But I'm better when I do that. Because then what happened is after I engage in conversation with that person, I could say, hey, I need to go talk to Christy. You want to come with me? Our new council member for this area, for where church sits, Blewett, was there. And I knew there are concerns that Oaklawn has that we very much need to discuss with him. And I went to go talk to him, and there's a line, of course, of people who are waiting there. And then I noticed that his spouse was standing there, as many pastor spouses do, waiting while everyone else talks to the pastor. And I recognized that in a city council member spouse. So I stopped waiting to talk to him, and I talked to her. Not only was it more beneficial in the beginning of what I hope will be a good friendship, but then it gave me the opportunity to introduce other folks that I have been talking with to her. This is what Jesus does at a party. This is what we're called to do. A party is an opportunity for ministry and to develop new friendships. It doesn't mean that you never talk to the people you know, but it's not necessarily where we start. Jesus did this with the Samaritan woman at the well, with Zacchaeus, with people he invited to be his disciples. He came to address poverty, but he knew that friendship poverty was related to financial poverty. Imagine how Oak Lawn as a neighborhood would be different if Christians always did this. Sought out the loneliest person in the room and talked to them. Imagine how our congregation would be different. And this is a huge opportunity that we have. Forbes magazine 2 years ago ranked the fastest growing urban neighborhoods in the United States. Uptown was number 3, Oak Lawn was number 7 in the United States. Two of the fastest growing urban neighborhoods in the United States. There are people who are lonely in this neighborhood.
That's right.
And as someone who spends a lot of time in Union, this coffee shop, which you have generously and amazingly helped create and give a space for ministry, I can tell you I meet them every single day, walking in for the first time, looking around the coffee shop because they've never been there before, but also looking around the neighborhood because they've never been there before. There are more of them coming in than Union could ever take care of. Will you please help us welcome them? Will you please come by? If you want a name tag, I'll give you a name tag so you feel more official.
Still haven't given me one.
Always good to have the pastor's kid in the room to hold the pastor accountable.
Because everybody knows.
Yeah. I'm going to teach Thomas how to make the name tags. He'll get you a name tag. How about that? And on your name tag, Thomas, it's going to be name tagger. That will just be your title. The second thing that comes in the instructions from Jesus for your Labor Day party and every other party you attend is to invite those without friends to join your table, for you will be blessed. And he goes on to say, will be repaid in the resurrection of the righteous. Which is Jesus speak, I think, not for some sort of long-off reward that happens way on in the future. I think it's another way of understanding the Greek there is that you will be resurrected as righteous. Invite those who are uninvited. And you will be resurrected as righteous. And I think the Hebrews passage for today gives a sense of what that means, because it talks about how when you welcome the stranger, you very well may welcome angels unaware. Angel means messenger of God. Welcome, invite others. If you have a table, bring others to it. If you have a party, swing the invitation wide. And if you are lonely, say yes to every invitation. You are not a burden. If someone has invited you, they want you there. And sometimes we feel like that we don't belong at that table. We don't belong in that space. We feel like I'm not good enough to be there, or I can't bring anything to that table. And I think the beauty of the Hebrew scripture is it says, like, no, you have a part to play because you might be that angel, even if you are unaware of it.
That's right.
I can't tell you the number of times that Billie Jean has been an angel to the folks over at Union.
Amen.
And times that I think she was unaware of it. Say yes to every invitation. And she does. She shows up at all our stuff. It's wonderful. In saying yes, you are not only opening up to the possibility that you might be an angel to them, but you are also giving them the opportunity to practice hospitality, which is in and of itself a gift. Someone might be redeemed and resurrected because you show up at their party. To those who have friendship privilege, leverage that privilege and extend it to others. In the city of Dallas, one of the things that I've learned is that connections are currency. But unlike most currency, the more you spend your connections, the more you have. If you have the privilege of connections in the city of Dallas and friendship, leverage it. Spend it freely and wildly. It will come back to you 100-fold. As Michael Brandon Hill stood in the entryway of that school, As police started to arrive, Antoinette Tuff walked up to him, not too close, and started to tell him, it's hard. Life. She talked about her divorce. She talked about how she feared losing her kids and that she thought things would never get better. And then she said, things will be okay. She called him baby. A man with an AK-47. She called him baby. She said, if you surrender, it'll be okay. She said, if you don't trust the police in the process of surrendering, I'll walk out with you and you can point the gun at me. No one was shot that day. Now, I'm not saying that we will end mass shootings, which are so a part of our awareness right now, by, simply being loving and kind to everyone. I'm not saying that that is the solution to eradicating this. It's a wicked problem with complex solutions, and we pull one thread only to find it tightens others, right? Like, it is a wicked, tangled mess of a reality that we face. But what if Antoinette Tuff wasn't the exception to rule and was the standard? When she was interviewed and folks talked to her on CNN, and they asked, how did you know what to do? You're a bookkeeper, not a hostage negotiator. And she said, I don't know. I just knew I needed to make sure he knew he was loved. Let's find ways to make sure people know they're loved. This weekend. This week. And in all the days to come, as we enter into spaces, let us look for the loneliest person in the room. And let's spend time with them. And if we are the loneliest person in the room, remember, we might be angels. And that's an important role to play. Amen?
Amen.